Shonen Jump is a name I'm sure most of you are familiar with. They publish some of the largest manga on the planet, stuff like Dragon Ball, One Piece, Naruto, Bleach, My Hero Academia, Black Clover, and so much more. And as someone who's a huge fan of Shonen Jump anime and manga, I think it's really cool when they do crossovers with the different characters. It ranges from something pretty simple like the Jump magazine covers, having the characters all drawn together, to the Dragon Ball Z, One Piece, and Toriko crossover anime episodes. And of course, we can't forget about all the Shonen Jump crossover video games that takes these characters and puts them in a video game together. I'm sure most people watching this video right now have at least heard of Jump Force and how big of a disaster that game was. But that's not the first time Shonen Jump has put their characters in a game together. It's actually the 9th time, 12 if you count the mobile games. And as someone who is both a huge fan of Shonen Jump and as someone who played Jump Force when it released, I wanted to go back to the other times these characters were put in games together to see if any of them are better than the disaster that was Jump Force. Also, I'll be ranking these games on this tier list, with what I think are some pretty self-explanatory tiers. And then after playing all the past Jump crossover games, I want to re-experience Jump Force nearly 6 years later, and see where it stacks up against these other games, and see if maybe it's better than everyone remembered, or if it's still just bad. So that's why I play... Kinda. Quick disclaimer, I was not able to play any of the Jump crossover mobile games. 2 of them have had their servers shut down, and the third one, which is actually the newest Jump crossover game after Jump Force, is not out in the US currently. It did, however, have a closed beta back in September, and some people who were able to play it uploaded YouTube videos on it. So if you are interested in that one, or any of the other mobile games that were shut down, I'm sure you can find gameplay of it if you just look it up on YouTube. Also, I stream me playing all of these games over on twitch.tv/JC's Reviews. Check that out if you're interested. I also stream on YouTube sometimes too. But because it was a stream, I only played about 20 minutes of each game to get my first impressions. So if any games in this video interest you, I encourage you to go play them yourself. Anyways, now let's get into the first game. To play the first Shonen Jump crossover game, we have to go all the way back to 1989, when Famicom Jump Eiyuu Retsuden released for the Famicom system. For anyone who doesn't know what a Famicom is, it was the first home console Nintendo ever made, before renaming it to the Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES, when they brought it over to the US. I know this probably isn't relevant to this video's topic, but hey, I'm a huge nerd about video games too. So yeah, anyways, this game's an RPG where you play as a kid that gets sucked into the Shonen Jump comic books while reading them one night, and he has to do something. As with most games in this video, the entire game is in Japanese and has never been translated before, so the story is a little lost on me in this one, but the gameplay is kind of fun. You just kind of run around punching and shooting random goons. There was one part where I went to Fortune Teller Baba's palace and fought 3 enemies just like Goku did in the original Dragon Ball, so that was kind of cool. Aside from that, there wasn't a whole lot here other than some kinda catchy retro music. Keep in mind though that I don't understand Japanese, and because of that I couldn't figure out what to do, so I kinda only just ran around punching bad guys for 20 minutes. The game might be amazing if I could speak Japanese, but for what it was enjoyable. So I'm gonna put it in had fun but probably wouldn't play again off camera. Now if you gave me this game as a kid, I would have had a blast running around just punching dudes. Now the next game is actually the sequel to Famicom Jump. It is Famicom Jump 2, Saikyou no 7 Nin. The 7 likely referring to the 7 playable characters. That's right, instead of playing as some random kid sucked into the Shonen Jump universe, you get to play as actual characters from the magazine. Now, I'm not super familiar with Shonen Jump around this time period because I wasn't alive, so forgive me if I pronounce any of the characters or their series names wrong. You can choose between Son Goku from Dragon Ball Z, Jotaro Kujo from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Madea Tyson from Rokudansai Blues, Tarchan from Jungle King Tarchan, Tararuto from Magical Tararuto, Momotaro Tsurugi from Sakigaki Otokojuku, Royotsu Kankechi from Kochikame Tokyo Beat Cops. Again, sorry if I mispronounced those names, I have not heard of actually a lot of those series. Anyways, I decided to go with Jotaro since he's awesome and is also one of the only 2 characters that I'm familiar with, and I figured he probably wouldn't be in as many of the games going forward. So this game is pretty similar to the last one, seeing as it's a sequel, which means, of course, it was all in Japanese again, and I couldn't understand the story or what I was supposed to do. Which also means it took me like 10 minutes to get out of the starting temple area, and I had to look up a let's play in the middle of the stream. Which, by the way, I paused the timer while I was looking that up and figured out what to do, and didn't start it until I actually started playing the game. But once I did get going, it was, let's just say, not fun. So you know in Pokemon games, when walking through grass, you get a random Pokemon encounter, and sometimes that can be annoying, especially when you don't need a new Pokemon and have to go through an area covered with grass. Now imagine that, but instead of that happening just in grass, everywhere you walked, there was a chance to encounter a Pokemon. So this game decided to change the combat from the first game, where you just run around punching guys, and instead make it like Pokemon, but where you get an encounter with either a bat or slime, and it does the classic Pokemon fade into the fight. But like I mentioned earlier, this happens everywhere once you get out of the starting area, and not only that, you get these encounters every 5 to 10 seconds. I'm not joking, I counted in the middle of the stream.
Let's see, 1, 2, 3... 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, oh maybe not, 9, yep, there.
Then you have a clunky turn-based battle with one of these enemies, where on your turn you have to navigate around a weird placement of invisible walls to get to the enemy, and then you can choose what you want to do.
How do I get to him? What the fuck is... How do you get over there? Bro, this game's... Why are you restricting where I can and can't go? Tell me...
This game made me realize why now in most turn-based combat games, you don't get to move around and you just select what you want to do. The craziest part about this game is it came out 8 years before the first Pokemon game ever released, so there's a chance that this game maybe influenced Pokemon in some way. Unless all JRPGs from this time period were like this, I don't really know. But the developers of this game, Spike Chunsoft, who actually didn't develop the first Famicom Jump, went on to develop a lot of the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games, but they also developed a lot of anime games, like almost any anime game you can think of, including some of the ones covered later on in this video, like Jump Force. But hey, they also made Sparking Zero and like every other Dragon Ball Z game ever, so I think I can forgive them having a couple bad games. Anyways, this game annoyed me a lot, and I never want to play it again, so yeah, we'll put it in that tier. Now it's time to move on from the Famicom, because the next game is Colt Jump, released on the Nintendo Game Boy in 1993. And I'm gonna be completely honest with you, this game kind of fucking slaps. This game was shockingly fun for not being able to understand a word, because once again, it's entirely in Japanese and was never translated. Colt Jump is a dungeon crawler type game where the only way to beat enemies and open doors is to answer a quiz related to different Shonen Jump series. And if you get a question wrong, you take damage. If you get a question right, you deal damage to the enemy. Yes, this game is probably the least accessible to someone who doesn't speak Japanese like me, but it has such a unique concept that I loved it anyways. Some of the bosses would start drawing a picture of a Shonen Jump character, and you had to guess which character it was before the time ran out, which I thought was super fun and creative. Even though I randomly button mashed my way through this game, I bet I would have played the whole thing if it had a translation. So as surprising as this may seem, this game goes in peak. It was unique and fun despite the language barrier, and if for some reason you're watching this video and you speak Japanese and like translating games, I will literally pay you to translate the game so I can play it, unless it's like an insane amount of money and I can't afford it. I just really want to play this game. It's really good. I really want a translated version. It's great. It's great. Anyways, enough rambling about that game. We're finally moving into an era of Shonen Jump that I'm familiar with. Jump Superstars for the Nintendo DS released in 2005, which means there was about a 12-year gap between the last Jump crossover game and this game. Superstars is a platform fighter, so despite it not being translated, I was able to figure out what to do, albeit after a lot of tutorials that I couldn't understand. This game feels like Smash Brothers, and I guess even more specifically, it feels almost exactly like Super Smash Flash, which if you haven't played, it does technically have multiple Jump characters in it, so it could technically be considered a Jump crossover game, albeit a fan-made one. Anyways, Jump Superstars is probably the highest quality game so far, which isn't too surprising when you find out that the game was actually published by Nintendo, and the director worked on a bunch of other Nintendo games, like the Game Boy version of Donkey Kong Country and the WarioWare game series. But I actually had a lot of fun with this game. I didn't play long enough to unlock that many characters, but I got to play as some DBZ, One Piece, and Naruto characters. But here's a list of playable characters if you're interested. You can pause and read this. The gameplay is pretty fun, which I guess is to be expected of a Smash-like game, and the way you switch different characters was interesting. Instead of just picking one character, you have manga panels of your 2 playable and your 2 support characters. And each panel is from, I'm assuming, an actual panel from each respective Jump series. And you can switch between the characters and use the support characters by tapping on the panel with your 3DS stylus, which is definitely what I did. I did not play on an emulator. Also, this game, from what I played, had a really interesting level design where you're literally playing in the Jump magazine and you could tear a hole open into the side of the stage like a book, and that's how you knock characters off of the stage, which is so creative and fun. As with all these games, I didn't play a whole lot, but I would totally go back to play again to mess around and unlock other characters, so I'm putting this in would play again. The next game is probably one of the more disappointing games I played. It's Battle Stadium D.O.N, which stands for Dragon Ball, One Piece, and Naruto. As the name implies, you play as characters from those manga/anime. It released for the PS2 and GameCube in 2006, and it's a 2D fighters just like Superstars, but with 3D graphics. However, unlike the last game, it doesn't really feel that great to play. It's pretty much a spam special move and win kind of game. Luffy has this one move called Gum Gum Fireworks, and it just melts people and hits in all directions, so it's almost impossible to dodge. And I would just spam that move. Same with every other characters. If you spam your moves, you just win. Keep in mind though, I didn't play any character, nor am I interested in going back to play as any of them. There isn't really a whole ton to do in the game. You have versus battles where you can pick a stage and change rules with items and stuff like that, kind of like Smash. And then an endless survival mode, which is mostly what I played because I wanted to fight against as many different characters as possible. The stages I think were fine, except the moving ones. God, I hate the Naruto Chunin Exam Forest stage. It's a side-scrolling map where not only do you have to fight and navigate the fallen logs and trees, but Orochimaru's snake is a map hazard that will go through the map and hit you. Also, the One Piece Skypiea Vine map was pretty bad, and half the time the CPU was so dumb it would fall off and kill itself. Now, a couple bad stages isn't enough to drop it all the way down. When I did the stream, I did put it in I wouldn't play again off camera, but looking back, it is very much the definition of mid, so I'm gonna put it in mid. Maybe if I played it with friends, it could have been more fun experience, but for now, mid. Now the next game is actually the sequel to Jump Superstars, Jump Ultimate Stars, which released for the Nintendo DS in 2006. It's pretty much the same as the first game with a few tweaks and some pretty creative ideas. The only thing I will say is that the tutorial sucks. Now it might have been that I had just finished playing Jump Superstars before this and had almost an identical tutorial, but it took me 10 minutes before I could actually play the game. And no, I didn't count the tutorial in my 20-minute timer. Tutorial aside, the gameplay and combat is pretty fun, just like the last one. One thing I think is super creative is that the manga panel thing, where you have your support characters and playable characters, is customizable, and you get to fit these manga panels in kind of like Tetris. And since you only have a limited amount of space, you have to decide which character is worth taking up space or not. I think this is so cool that I went back to the game and messed around with this, seeing what combination of characters I could make. Also, I like that you get to pick a Shonen Jump universe to go into, and then you'll fight against characters from that series. I wish beating all the levels in one of these universes was how you unlock the characters from their respective universe, but instead you just buy any character you want from the shop, which is kind of disappointing. And one thing that this game has over every other game I played is that you can play as Alan Walker, the most fucking underrated Shonen Jump character ever. He's like one of the best shonen protagonists of all time, and he's only in this game, and probably Superstars too, but I didn't get far enough to unlock or fight him. In this game, I fought him, and I actually went back to unlock him, and I really like getting to play as him. He's a really good and fun character to play as. He would definitely be my main if I played this game competitively or as a kid. Anyways, enough of me gushing over Alan Walker. Please watch or read The Gray Man if you haven't already. It's so good, please just watch it, please. Jump Superstars I'll put in peak, because not only is it a great game, it's also the only game with Alan Walker in it. Now, before we get into the last two games, I want to talk about a couple things I decided to cut from this video, aside from the mobile games I couldn't play. The first is the game J Legend Retsuden for the Nintendo 3DS. This game is just a compilation of a bunch of different Shonen Jump games, so it's not really a crossover, which is why I didn't include it in the video. I'm sure some people would classify this game as a crossover, but I'm not going to go play through like 12 different games just because they happen to be in a compilation, because that would make the video way too long, so that's why I didn't play that. The other is kind of the same story, but it's interesting, so I wanted to at least mention it. It's the Nintendo Classic Mini that was released for Jump's 50th anniversary. It's a mini console that's themed after Shonen Jump with a bunch of retro Jump games on it, which I think is really cool and interesting, so that's why I wanted to at least mention that one. Okay, now moving on to the last two games, I just wanted to cover all my bases in case someone was like, well, technically you didn't play every Shonen Jump crossover game. Anyways, on to the next one. J-Star's Victory Versus released in 2014 for the PS3, and released another updated version called J-Star's Victory Versus Plus for the PS4 in 2015, adding new characters. And that's the one we'll be playing because it's basically the same game, just with new characters. Plus I already own it. J-Stars is really nostalgic for me as the very first Jump crossover game I ever played, all the way back when the only anime I'd ever seen were Naruto, Dragon Ball Z, and Bleach. So yeah, I was kind of lost on who most of the characters were when I played this as a kid, but this is one of the first times I ever saw Luffy, Koro-sensei, Gon, and basically every other Shonen Jump character aside from the ones from Dragon Ball Z, Bleach, and Naruto. So going into this, I might have some bias. And yeah, this game's pretty fun. This was the precursor to Jump Force, and it's actually great. It's a 3D fighter, and I like how you can run around all over the map. Like, you can jump onto the roof of a building in the Leaf Village and start fighting there, to then get knocked off and thrown through the whole village. It's pretty fun, but the maps are a little big, so sometimes you'll end up having to run around trying to hit your opponent. Also, this is a 3-person team combat game, kind of like how Jump Force is, but instead of switching between the 3 characters, all of them are on the board at once, which now that I think about it is probably why the maps are so big, since there are 6 characters on the map at the same time. The other 2 characters are controlled by CPUs, and you gotta try to beat the other team. Also, the team you pick can affect how strong the characters are, since you get bonuses if you put characters who are friends in the same team. Like if you put Luffy and Ace in a team. I'm not exactly sure what bonus it gives. I'm sure someone who's played could answer that, but I think that's kind of cool. Also, to do your ultimate attack, you have to do this thing where your team synergizes with each other, which I thought was kind of annoying to have to watch this cutscene every time you do your ultimate attack, but I mean, it's not a big deal. Another thing that this game has is kind of a story-like adventure mode. You pick between Luffy, Naruto, Toriko, or Ichigo, and go on an adventure as one of them, fighting and then gathering new Shonen Jump characters to add to your team. Now that I think about it, it's basically like the story mode in Smash Ultimate. It was kind of fun seeing these characters interact, and I thought the little I played here was more entertaining than the story mode I played in Jump Force years ago. The only big complaint I have about this game is the characters that aren't playable. Like, some of the support characters you should totally be able to play as. Like, Chitoge from Nisekoi, I totally understand as being a support character, but like, man, they made Alan Walker a support character. Why do they gotta keep doing this to my boy? Please let me play as him. Aside from that, Rukia from Bleach and Hisoka from Hunter x Hunter are also support characters who fight in their series, and who it would have been really cool to play as. There are still a lot of playable characters, but I wish some of the support characters were playable. Overall, having some unplayable characters isn't enough to make the game bad, and I did really enjoy it, so yeah, I would play that again. If you were disappointed by Jump Force, I would recommend giving this game a shot. And now, finally, we are at the most recent Jump crossover console game, a game I've mentioned many times throughout this video. It is, of course, Jump Force. So I played all these Jump crossover games back to back and was hoping that would make me appreciate Jump Force more now. So is Jump Force actually good, and were people wrong about it all those years ago? No. To no one's surprise, Jump Force is still pretty bad. The hyper-realistic art style is horrifying to say the least, and the gameplay is so rough. The camera shake in this game is insane. Fights feel disorienting, and I honestly felt dizzy after playing it for only 20 minutes, and I never want to play it again. So yeah, put it all the way down there. But hey, you probably already knew that, which is why when I first thought of this video idea, my original plan was to play Jump Force but modded, because everyone had seen regular Jump Force. The modding community around this game has made some really cool shit, like Gear 5 Luffy as a playable character, which I would have loved to try out, even if the game is bad. Now, why didn't I do that? Well, because Jump Force was delisted from every storefront. The only reason I was able to play it now was because I still own my physical copy of the game on my Xbox I bought all those years ago. There's only one way to play it on PC if you never bought it when it released and you don't want to spend $200 on a Steam key that people are selling, and that, of course, is to sail the 7 seas. As much as game companies don't want you to, some of these games that get delisted and are no longer available to purchase are literally only available to those who pirate them. Now, I know what you're going to say, who cares, especially about a game as bad as Jump Force? Well, you should care. Sure, to you and I, we will probably never play Jump Force again, but not everyone hated Jump Force. There are people who genuinely enjoyed it when it first released, and I was one of those people. I'm 22 years old now. Jump Force released in 2019, back when I was 17, almost 18. And at the time, Jump Force was the coolest thing for me. I even signed up for and played the beta and had a blast playing as these characters I loved. I even still have clips up on my Instagram that you can go and watch right now of me playing Jump Force back when I used to stream on Twitch under a different name. I loved what I played in the beta so much, I fucking bought the $300 collector's edition and got this sick-ass statue, which to be honest is probably the coolest thing to come out of Jump Force. When the game first released, I played it day one, and I didn't even notice a lot of the problems. Yeah, as the years went by, I was able to plainly see all the issues with Jump Force, but I was still hoping the game that I loved back then was still there. That's the real reason I made this video. Yeah, I was interested in playing those other Jump games, and I had a lot of fun doing just that, but I was really hoping all of that would have made me appreciate Jump Force now. But yeah, it's not good. The game hasn't changed, it's me who's changed. And that's okay. But no matter how bad a game is, future generations should be able to decide for themselves if a game is good or not. That's why I own physical media, why I still own that copy of Jump Force. Because any media can be taken down at any time for any reason. Yes, I am aware that the game had its servers taken down, but the game is still fully playable offline, so my point still stands. Jump Force, even with how bad it is, should be preserved for all the modders and people who genuinely enjoyed it, and for the future generations who will find and play this shitty anime game and maybe enjoy it. So yeah, that's my full tier list for Jump crossover games. Keep in mind, excluding the games I either played in the past or went back to play again after the stream, I only played each game for about 20 minutes. So if you found any of these games interesting at all, I would highly encourage you to go and try them out yourselves, and maybe play more than 20 minutes. A lot of them are not exactly available legitly. This goes back to my original point with Jump Force, but almost none of these games have an easy, legit way to play them, because they're old games that were either never ported or are stuck on old consoles. Hell, most of them were never even released in the US. Obviously, I'm not going to tell you to pirate these games, so if you're interested in playing any of these games, go do your own research, and maybe go ask Luffy if you can join his crew. I know the end of this video kind of turned into me ranting about media preservation, but hey, that shit's important. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed going through all these Jump crossover games with me as much as I did. I had a lot of fun playing and researching these games. This is a video I've wanted to do for a really long time, so I'm glad I finally got around to it. Also, if you're interested, I'll post the full Twitch VOD of me playing all these games on my second channel, and that'll be linked in the description if you want to see that. Anyways, thanks for watching. I will see you all in the next video I upload. Peace. A moment of silence for Jump Force. Okay.